Hello class, Mr. Phelps here talking about lesson 1.2. Today we're going to talk about points, lines, and planes. So to start off with the lesson, today's goals are 1, know and draw basic terms of geometry, and 2, recognize intersections of lines and planes. Remember, be aware that you can pause this video at any time. If you ever need me to slow down, just pause it, work through the problem, work through what you need to, and then move forward with the video. So to start today's lesson, I'd like you guys to make this chart on your piece of paper. You're going to break it into 4 sections. That first section is going to be the term. We're going to learn some new vocab terms today. So starting off with the term, the description of that, or maybe a definition of that, the actual diagram that we see, and then the name. So our first term is a segment. A segment is a part of a line including 2 endpoints and all the points in between them. So if we look at this one on the board, right, part of a line, we look at A, B. That is part of a line that includes 2 endpoints, and then it's all the points that are in between those 2 points as well. And so how we say that, we would say it's segment AB, or we can write it like this. This is the notation we're always going to follow. All right, we do AB, and then we put a little segment right on top of it. So first term, segment. Again, feel free to pause the video anytime. Since most of this is vocab, I'm going to go fairly quickly to the next one. So just make sure to pause before we get to the next term. Our next one is line. Talking about a line. Similar to a segment, but a line is always straight and extends in 2 opposite directions without end, has no thickness, and contains infinitely many points. And so if we look at this up here, right, we have line, we can call it line AB. We name it by 2 points that are on the line. And notice it is continuous. It goes all the way out that way, all the way out this way. We also sometimes give it a lowercase letter. We can call it line M. And then the notation we use for a line is, again, the 2 points on it, and then we put a line on top with arrows on both sides of it. That notates that we are talking about a line AB, not a segment AB. Our next term is a ray. A ray. So a ray is part of a line that consists of 1 endpoint and all points on the line on one side. One side, that's the key part of this. A ray is only talking about one side of that endpoint. And so notice we have this ray, we call it ray AB, because we have an endpoint here at A. It goes through point B, and it continues on forever in that direction. Notice A is the endpoint, so we call it AB. We call it ray AB, and that is how we notate it right there. Right? We have the ray symbol up above, and then the 2 points that are on it. Notice the order of the letters does matter. This is ray AB if you have the arrow going to the right. You could call it ray BA if you have the arrow going to the left. But what you cannot do is you cannot call this ray BA and have the arrow going to the right, because that is incorrect, right? Our ray does not start at B, it starts at A and goes out that way. So this is no good. Our next term is talking about rays again, but they're called opposite rays. And so our vocab word opposite rays, it is 2 rays that share the same endpoint and together form a line. And so if we look at our 2 endpoints, or our 2 rays here, we have ray CA, so I'll show that here, C A. We create a ray. Now change color here. We now have ray C, B, and it goes off in that direction. And notice if we were to combine those two rays together, we have made a line, which you can have many different names for this line, but we'll just call this line AB. Our next term today is called a point. A point indicates a location where you are, whether it's on a coordinate plane or on a graph somewhere. It is a point, and it has no size. Right? How we notate this is we can either write out point A, or we do a point and then put the letter in which we use. So point A. Our next term is called a plane. A plane. A plane is represented by a flat surface that extends without end and has no thickness. It contains infinitely many lines. So if we look at this, right, we have this plane here. We have a couple different ways to name it. We can name this plane P, right, because we have one uppercase letter in that plane, or we can name it by 3 of its points. So you have to include 3 points. So notice we have point A, point B, and point C in that plane. So we can call it plane A, B, C. Plane A, B, C. Our next term here are collinear points. Collinear points. And so we have to think about that co part when we think about what does that mean, collinear. When you think about a pilot and you have a co-pilot, right? That's somebody that's in the same plane as them, flying that same plane. Collinear is saying 2 points that are on the same line. So if we look at this, collinear points, well, that would be I or H. Or you could say J and H. Excuse me. So we have points that lie on the same line. Any 2 points would then be called collinear. Key thing is that if you can draw a line through both points, they are collinear. And so we'll take that example with points M and N, right? There is one line that we can draw that goes right through both of those points. Those points then are collinear to one another. They can be on the same line. So now, just like we had collinear, we also talk about planes. We have coplanar. So coplanar points are points and lines that lie in the same plane. So if we look here, right, we have point A, point B, point C. All 3 of those points are on the same plane, so we would call those coplanar points because they lie on that same plane. We can also talk about lines, and we'll get to that. Talk about lines if they share a line on that plane. Next term here is just space, and so we're not talking about outer space in this case. What we're talking about is, mathematically speaking, space is the set of all points in 3-dimensional space. So it's all of the points and everything that you can get in 3-dimensional. So some new vocab words here. Don't need to put them for sure on that chart. These are kind of some new things. Intersection, we've probably heard this term before, right? A set of points that the 2 figures have in common, where they cross, where they intersect one another, right? You talk about intersections of roads. That's where they cross one another. And then in our books and during our class this year, you'll hear a lot about postulates and axioms. What those are is they are accepted statement of fact. We don't need to prove them. We're going to do things called proofs in this class. But for postulates and axioms,